know too that it's not a question of an accident here. What's pointed out here above all is that shikha, getting, is not an accident. You say it was not done deliberately. A person doesn't get deliberately, and it's not considered an accident. It is considered deliberate because we find in Pirkei Avos that a person who is not reviewing, learning, and forgets it is guilty. Because this could be controlled. Shikha could be controlled. A person should make certain provisions. See that he is not to forget. Put a string around his throat, pull tight, very tight, and remind himself that he must do a certain item. And this way he will not forget. There is no actual excuse. Since this could be controlled, therefore the reason is fine. If it is that shikha is the opposite of oid, might, which is zecher to this Tikuney Zohar. Remember always about the Kedusha, remember always about the reason for our being here, mitzvahs, the tzadikim, and we should be zecher to see the emes of the tzadikim, the oid of the Nula Shlema, Shabbos Kodesh. Speaking about the halachos of hadlokas nedas, very appropriately, we've just spoken about the union of a woman when she lights candles should have a splendidness, daven for good children. Today we extend a very joyous mazel tov to Mishenichnas Ador Mavim Mesimcha. Avraham David Rosenberg brings all his simchas. She's able to have a lot of nachas from this Rach, his son, his firstborn son of Aharon, and Aharon is born to the family. It means a lot of simchas will come. Yerushalmi to simchas b'klal v'prat. But in reference to that topic, to delve into it slightly, a little bit more, the thing is that what is the major reason for candle lighting? To have good children, of course, but the major reason is to bring about a shalom between a husband and wife. Because then the Shekhinah is present in the home, and then there is a blessing from above, and then there are good children born. So it's a continuous cycle. You recall the Gemara says that there was once a couple who used to have friction, battles at home. And whatever battles they were, whether they were screaming battles or actual war, this couple couldn't get along. The Satan, the Zohar was there in this house. The Satan ruled over the house, especially Shabbos Kodesh. You know, Shabbos is called Shabbos Shalom. Rav Alones came to visit this house, and he stayed there for 3 weeks, and he brought about a complete shalom between his husband and wife. And he heard, you could hear the Satan screaming, woe is to the Satan, because he was driven out of this house by Rav Alones, and he brought about shalom. In this case of a battle between husband and wife, the Mishnah says that one of the greatest mitzvahs in existence, one of the greatest possible, one of the few where there is reward, schar, in this world and in Olam Haba. Usually there's no schar in this world. This is the case where there's schar even here too. It's bringing about peace between two people, and especially between husband and wife. A person who is zecher to do that, imagine what a mitzvah he has. He does not have to go searching to China or to the remotest recesses of the world. He finds it right in his own backyard, this treasure. In fact, not in his backyard, in his front yard, in his front porch, in his kitchen. Whenever there is, Chas Shalom, a mechlekes between himself and his wife, he has the treasure right there to seek peace, to make peace. And woe is to that person, woe is to that person whose vanity and gaiva says, let her make the overtures, let her begin, let her make the peace. Because he is losing out on a treasure like this, for one thing. And secondly, b'chlal, in one word, kaviyachal, it's always good to be on the side of a winner. Right? That's understood. The person doesn't want to be a loser. It's always good to be on the side of Hashem. Now, on whose side is Hashem in case of this battle? Hashem is always on the side of the wife. So therefore, if that's the case, it's better if the man goes to the side of the wife than against her. Be on the winning side. So if you can't beat him, join him. In this case, he's joining up with Kaviyach and the Shekhinah Hashem. When there is Shalom Bayis, of course, then the Shekhinah rests there, and the Kamiyach Hashem is satisfied, and there is Mazal Bracha, good children are on board the Mela, plus all this plus the R Nosson, the Shefa, which comes about because of Shalom Bayis. The person should be Oyev Shalom, Reder Shalom, Sik Shalom. This is all shown, demonstrated by the lighting of the candles. In fact, the woman lights candles, she must follow 4 good children. This should bring together the husband and wife. That's why more advanced stages also know that the whole you have the yichud of a Talmud Chacham. The Kedusha is Dafka Friday night. Dafka. The status, the holiest moment when the Shekhinah's presence is its fullest. But this did, of course, applies every day of the week too. Present should be barefoot. Shekhinah's Shabbos. So I think it is this Shalom, which is the biggest blessing. The person should be a Ben Shalom, like our Chassan did today. Ben Shalom HaKayin. We should be zecher to have Shalom between us. Not that Arizal said that you can be the biggest tzadik if you have Shalom among yourselves. And Arizal said, his Talmidim, it was a pity. He said, we learned from the Shimon Yechoyzel, we learned from Yaakov, how important it is to have Shalom among us. He said, but even if we have Shalom among us, Arizal was ever that we who had Shalom. But they failed to realize that Shalom among them was not enough. They had to have Shalom between themselves and their wives too. And this they lack, and that's why they lost the chance to have a Mashiach then. Shalom means the entire group. It must be one singly, solidly, well-knit group. Shalom, again, with the Shekhinah there, we will then have Shalom between us and the Yiddish Mashamayim. We should be zecher to the Simchat Kolius. Hashem will bring Shalom al Kol Yisrael, and the Shalom for the Bias of Mashiach, the kiruv, the Yerushalmi, the Simcha again, Simchat Kolius, and make us Mazel Tov again. See this video, the going with the fetus, blessed by the Schus of Arizal. Daily should come from this Avas Nashena, as we would all like to say. Hilchos Shabbos, dealing of the tefillos on Shabbos. The minig is on Shabbos Kodesh, end of Shabbos Kodesh, in the evening, to mekabel Shabbos earlier than during the week. The normal time during the week to daven Marav is when it is dark. Shabbos Kodesh, to mitzvah to add from the weekdays onto the Shabbos Kodesh, make the Shabbos longer. And through that time, from the end of the week before Shabbos, or from the beginning of the week after Shabbos. So therefore, it is better to be mekabel Shabbos as early as possible. But there is one restriction. That is plag hamincha, which means an hour and a quarter before dark or before sundown. That's the earliest possible time to mekabel Shabbos. And this is something where people make mistakes very often. There's a lot of controversy about this. The only reason that there is controversy and argument, debate about this among the so-called lumdim is simply because of ignorance of the fact. The only reason, because there is no one, and there is of course one day in the Bach who says it's possible, slightly possible before, but even there's no question. All the posek all agree completely. The din of plag hamincha is a very strict one. Now again, what is plag hamincha? Plag hamincha means half of the time between the zaman of mincha ketana until dark. Mincha ketana is 2.5 hours before dark. That's the time of mincha ketana. Better time of mincha. Divide that in half, you have an hour and a quarter. So an hour and a quarter, which means, what's meant by an hour? Always divide the day into 12 parts. 1/12 of the day is an hour. So if the day is 18 hours long, that means that an hour is 90 minutes. And then divide that into 4 parts, a quarter of that, you have 90 minutes plus quarter, should be about say 22.25 minutes. So you have 90 and 22.25 would be 112.25 minutes would be plag hamincha before Before what now? Now we have machlekes again. This hour and a quarter before dark, is it? Which means before 72 minutes after the Shkia, or does it mean an hour and a quarter before sundown? So if we take the lightest, take the biggest kula, according to the Grozal, the Wush, that it means an hour and a quarter before sundown, still, so we come back to a much earlier time, but that time, whatever it is, earlier than that, a minute earlier than that, if a person lights candles, a woman lights candles before that time, she has said the bracha in vain, and she must light the candles again. It means nothing. It's as though she did nothing at all. If a person accepts the Shabbos before Plag HaMincha, his davening is completely in vain. He must say the whole davening over again because it's impossible to accept Shabbos before. The reason for the error on the part of many people who know how to learn, because the Gemara says that one of the rabbis in the Gemara, Rav, we call Shabbos when it was still fully day. Fully day, they figure, means 12 noon. And that's an error that has sort of spread. Factually, a person can have to recall Shabbos before Plag HaMincha. That's the very earliest. But from Plag HaMincha on until the regular time, all that is the proper time to recall Shabbos. The earlier, the better. Especially in candle lighting. Imagine that there is nothing better than lighting candles at Plag HaMincha. And a woman who lights candles at Plag HaMincha is there to have the Shekhinah in her home the very earliest possible moment the Shekhinah can come down. So how fortunate their home is, where the Rakas is at that time. Same thing too with being Mikabel Shabbos. A person who wants to have the Shabbos longer, he's allowed to Shadap Mincha first, naturally, and then being Mikabel Shabbos as long as it's after Plag HaMincha, even though it is well daylight. Fully daylight. Ordinarily, you would not daven matter when the sun is shining brightly, still an hour before sundown. Still, it is permissible to do this Erev Shabbos Kodesh and to Erev Yentiv. The bracha for Maariv is different also. The bracha for Maariv Bekas Hashkivenu, we do not end like we do during the week. We do not end with the Shem Rama Yisrael Ad. We end with the Pedes Gasholim Menachem Mendel Schneerson. We start with the words of Freis Alinu Sukas Rachmim V'Chayim V'Sholim. Those are very important words because the Arizal says when you say those words, you have kavona to recover the Neshama Yisera of Friday night. That's first half of the Neshama Yisera. The second half comes in the morning. The Neshama Yisera, that's the highest level. Nefesh Ruach Neshama. The Neshama Yisera at the words of Freis Alinu Sukas Rachmim V'Chayim V'Sholim. Then you finish the bracha with a Pedes Gasholim Yisrael Ad Yerushalmi. If a person made a mistake and finished the worship of Ad, and he caught himself within a second or so, he can correct it and just add the words Pedes Gasholim. If he waited a second or two, then it is too late, then he should leave it go, because B'diavad is Yetzer with Yerushalmi. Again, it's very vital that every person should know that that bracha, especially there is particular care about it in heaven. And when that bracha is said by the Chazan, every person should say only with a tremendous kavanah, loud with kavanah, and make sure you do not start the next word until you finish. You say only first. This is the bracha for Shalom, for the Bnei Mikdash, for the return of the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah itself on Friday night is elevated. So at that point, the person should say the bracha properly with kavanah, all together and loud, which means to receive that bracha from the Shemayim, to see Shalom on Yisrael. Yisrael saying kiruv. Tufay Shabbos, Tfilos of Erev Shabbos Kodesh, the Tfilos of Friday night. Then says that after Shemona Esrei Balachash, immediately afterwards, no person may be mafsik. Cannot be mafsik between the Shemona Esrei and between Vayachulu, which is said together by everyone. This Vayachulu is considered edus, testimony. Each person is called upon to testify, bear witness to the fact that Hashem created the world in 6 days, by separation of 6 days, and the seventh day was the Yom Menucha. The seventh day, by Yerushalmi says Hashem finished his work on the seventh day. Kasha, he finished it on the 6th day, 6 days. The answer is that there was creation of something which is passive, a creation of rest. Menucha itself is a davar shebekdusha. Menucha could not exist without an actual bria. There was a bria of menucha, and that itself was the completion of Ma'aseh Bereishis. And this menucha is also a bria in that it is a perpetual motion, because the menucha of Shabbos is what creates afterwards the following 6 days. And these 6 days are not ones that came by themselves, not ones where it was automatic because Hashem was busy creating something, therefore the 6 days came about. Hashem created every one of the 6 days in itself. There was a bria of 6 days. That means then that those 6 days were created and no more. Hashem did not create the world to last. Afterwards he goes, there had to be a creation of time. So there had to be a new creation of time in the 2nd week, the 3rd week and so on. Right now also, there must be a creation of bria of time every single week for the new week. How is this time created? How is this repetition of Ma'aseh Bereishis done? How is this bria done nowadays too? The Torah says that a person who says Vayachulu with emunah shlema, that Hashem is the Bnei Olam and Hashem is Mashkiach Prati, that person is considered as actually being a shutaf, a partner to Hashem in the B'riyas Olam. Therefore, Vayachulu, the U is always usually spelled with a shutaf, with a vav and a dot. Here it's spelled Choseh without the vav and a dot. There's 3 dots down, since there's no dots in the Torah. So you have the word to be read not Vayachulu but Vayichlu. Vayichlu, and they finished creation. Who is they? Plural? Shtein Shuyas Chas v'Shalom? The answer is yes. There are 2 who are partners in creation. Hashem plus the person who is saying this passage Vayachulu. He is also taking part in this bria. He gets credit for actually the Isaac and B'riyas Olam, because he's creating a new week. And therefore, since this is done as testimony, the person must say this standing. You have 2 halachas. One must be said standing. 2. First, there is not allowed to be any hefsek whatsoever between the Esrei and Vayachulu. This is a very serious deal until after Kaddish is Kabbalah, in fact, or after the Nechas Me'en Sheva, there can be no hefsek at all. Then, third, of course, the Kavona should be pure. In addition, the Perik of Vayachulu, Pasha Vayachulu, is to be said, or to be covered 3 times on Friday night. Once it is said in the Shemona Esrei, once it is said after Shemona Esrei, and once it is listened to or said for the Kiddush, for those who may have missed it, the shul, it's permitting to say it at home again. Even if there's nobody at home who missed it, we're not Mishana, we don't change that meaning. So it's still said at home. So you have a total of 3 times Vayachulu is said every Friday night. And this is said throughout the entire year, every single Friday night of the year, except if the first night of Pesach comes out on Friday night, then too it is said, but the rest of the tefillahs will have then, I'll skip, we'll discuss the biggest Sheva and the Shem later on, to show how this Leil Shimurim is skipped and for what reason. We should be zeichet to the Emes Nishmorim, guard ourselves against any chisaron they began chashon the munah or Ma'aseh mitzvahs. We should be zeichet to be nishma guarded by Hashem. See the Yaskil saying later. Birchas Shabbos, continuing the Halacha of Tefillah Friday night. After Shemona Esrei, we said, everyone says Vayachulu. Vayachulu HaShemayim V'Aretz, which means that each person is testifying to Emunah Shleima. Because the Yesod Emunah, the Gemara says, is the Shabbos Kodesh. A person who is Shemin Shabbos demonstrates his emunah, his faith in Hashem. First is Mechal Shabbos, even if he obeys every other mitzvah in the Torah, he shows that he is a kafir and atheist. So by saying Vayachulu on Friday night, as a form of testimony, shows that a person has complete faith. Therefore, since this is a form of Eidos, testimony, it must be said standing, because the din is in the Omdu Shnei HaNoshim, the witnesses must stand when they testify. Since they are testifying now, it must be said standing. In addition, since this is testimony, witnesses must be two in order to be effective. The Halacha, so you have to have at least two people saying this together. There are some posek who say that if a person daven b'yachidus, he does not say vayachulu. It's not possible to say because he cannot testify as one. One another says that a person could say it, but he says it in the form of he should not deviate from his usual case. Say he can't daven with a million. As a shalom, he's incapacitated. So he should say vayachulu as though he was reading a pasha in the Torah, but still to say it. Normally, he said it's done to the Eidim, therefore it must be two Eidos together. So if a person is still davening Shemona Esrei while the rest of the Eidim begins to repeat vayachulu, he cannot say it with them. When he finishes Esrei himself, he should call upon somebody else to join him to repeat this vayachulu together with him. He should not have to say it alone. He should have someone else say it with him. They can have at least two together. At least. Previous Odom says a din, a chiddush, that it's better to say it a million. So, the Odom says that if a person is davening and he sees that they're going to stop by a chulu, so he should hurry up, finish quickly, so he could say it with the million. Better than just saying it and calling somebody else and saying two people together, better to say it with the entire million. Now, of course, it's true. Understood that it's better with the entire million. However, it surely we don't have to go all out to zip up the Shemona Esrei if he's that far away. If he's just a few words away from the end, he should hurry up to finish. Not to have to. That's why most places do not bring that. We see from here, though, that a person should say it as testimony, should say it with feeling, with kavanah, to show, demonstrate his true emunah in Hashem. In the course of that emunah, we will see the revival of the Shabbos Shulchan Lovay. Shabbos, which means the Gevula Shleima, the Binyan Beis Mikdash, right out, right? Hilchei Shabbos, Tefillah of Erev Shabbos, Tefillah of Leil Shabbos. After Shemona we say by Chulu, and then we come to the Bekas Me'in Sheva. The Chazan says, begins the Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the kiruv and kiruv, and like he starts Shemona Esrei, the Chazeres Hashatz, and then the paragraph Mogen Avos, and then the kiruv and kiruv, the Kadesh HaShabbos. So the Olam just says, yes, Mogen Avos. Chazan says, the beginning of the bracha and the end of the bracha. This is called bracha achas me'in sheva. It's one bracha containing all 7 brachas of the regular Shemona Esrei. It's a repetition of the Shemona Esrei, but in brief, combination of all brachas. But since it is one bracha, not 2, so the first part of the bracha, you do not answer Amen for the first paragraph before Mogen Avos, because that's not the end of the bracha. The end of the bracha is Kadesh HaShabbos. Secondly, since this bracha is for the Shliach Tzibur alone, so a person who davens the Yechidus, or a person who davens in the regular shul, says only Mogen Avos and not more. As in Shiloh, a person who davens the Yechidus said Mogen Avos also, just that paragraph alone, the right place can say that he is allowed to say Mogen Avos, that paragraph, anyhow. The reason for this bracha, Me'in Sheva, is because of those days the shuls were far from this, out of town, far from the city at times. There was a fear of mazikim, things that could do harm. So in case a person came to shul late, he would be left behind, others would leave. So they Aharon Musakin this bracha. The Chazan should say this bracha, and while the Chazan says it, the other person will catch up to it. That's the reason why it was made. since it was made only for the sake of saving people from these mazikim, so therefore on the first night of Pesach, which is called Leil Shimurim Hu Hashem, it's guarded by Hashem, there's no fear at that time. We open the door wide at the Seder to show we're not afraid. That night only, if it comes out on a Friday night, we do not say this bracha from Yeshua. Any other Shabbos, Friday night of the year, we do say it. This bracha too must be said dafka standing. Now, interestingly, since the Chazan repeats this, says this as though it was Chazoros Hashatz, there is a possibility a person could actually be Yitzhak with this bracha. Shemona Esrei, for example. The person would say the Shemona Esrei on Friday night, and by accident he fell asleep during the saying. He swung into the weekday Shemona Esrei. He said the whole weekday Shemona Esrei without reminding himself till it's finished, which means he now has to repeat the Shemona Esrei of Shabbos. So by listening to the Chazan saying this bracha, Achas Me'ez Sheva, but hearing the Chazan say every single word and saying it with the Chazan, is Yitzhak according to the many days, most days. What the Shemona Esrei does not say it over again. That's most days. Of course, some say that it's better if he does say it over, but the Chiddush know that such a halacha does exist. That this is actually considered Chazoros Hashatz, where a person can be Yitzhak when he mechavan to the entire Shemona Esrei. One bracha containing 7. Logan Ois Mirai, that's Logan Aharon. The Chayim Mesim B'Maramodai, that's the bracha B'Chayim Mesim. Of Keil HaKodesh is the bracha, the third bracha of the Shemona Esrei, Keil HaKodesh. The Mekadosh HaShabbos you have at the end of the paragraph, and then you say Medesh Mechoyim Ina Broches Keil HaIdois is Tzadik Shulchan Adonai Shalom is the Aruch Zohar last bracha of Shemona Esrei. The Medesh Mechoyim does it say Mekadosh HaShabbos or Rosh Shvi, that's because you want to end with the words of the Chasima. The last bracha will be Mekadosh HaShabbos, the middle bracha. The Shabbos, of course, in general, you have only 7 brachas instead of Shemona Esrei. Always, you'll have the first 3 and the last 3. And the Shem and are always the same. Middle bracha on Shabbos is Mekadosh HaShabbos. Now this, we end with this bracha because it all revolves around this one bracha. As we said, this bracha is one bracha. Amen should be said only at the very end. You must say Baruch Hu Shmai when the Chazan says Baruch Atah Hashem. There, and many Mekadosh Shabbos. We should be zecher to mashlim our clavers properly. The Kabbalah Shabbos Kodesh, the Ahava, the Kiruv Yeseda. Of course, the Shabbos should be just a Yerushalmi. Another Shabbos, the Tfilas, the Tfilas Madat, as we said, after Shemon we say by a kiruv, and by a kiruv said as Eidos. We testify the Emunah Hashem created the world, and that He rested on the seventh day. And the Gemara says that a person who believes in this is considered one who believes in the entire Torah. One who is kafir in Shabbos, Chalal Shabbos, even though he might obey all the other mitzvahs in the Torah, is considered a kafir in the entire Torah, and also an Eved of a Zohar, as it did of a Goy, as we learned. This, therefore, the Bayachulu is that important. It was brought to the Rida Chassid, the Sefer Chassidim, tells a story of two Chassidim, close friends, and of course, when one passes away, the other is curious to know as to the outcome of the trial. At the trial that takes place in heaven, a person has to go through a very terrifying experience, even if he's good, the best ones. One will explain those who have a list of Avedas, the trial itself is more frightening even than the punishment. I don't think you hit him. So these two are very, very great Chassidim. Chassid is even more than a tzadik because he's a Nivish and a Sadin. So they agree that one should tell the other the results of his trial, his din Torah in heaven. And one night, in sleep, the Chassid who passed away came to him, one who was sleeping saw him clearly. He saw that his face was a fiery red. Fiery red face. Right. So he asked him, what happened to you? He said, how did you make out there? Did they catch you with any sins as far as listed off the sins possible? Any halachas you broke in the ikka that didn't have taken up this? He said, I think 100%. Never committed a sin or shalom even a blessing. That's the highest madrega you did. Ever eat anything that was questionable? Never. Perfect. Tzadik, London, Isa Beheta. He said, well, what? What's wrong? The face looks like there's something wrong. He said, the face is the face of Gehenna. That's the fires of Gehenna that you see. You in Gehenna for what? I was found guilty of one crime because I was mafsek. I spoke after Shemon Esrei on Friday night during by a chulu Ogin Ovis Kanish Eskabel. The halacha is you're not allowed to talk out. By the time you finish Shemon Esrei, until the chazan finishes Kanish Eskabel, it's possibly hafsek. It's so strict at that point that even this great tzadik v'chassid was given Gehenna because he was mafsik at that point. This is a Christian. It's written in the Sefer Chassidim. Bavly Taisus V'nei Chassid, and it's brought halacha by all the Aharon, all the friends who agree this, to stress the point about the Yisur to be mafsik, to talk out. The person finishes Shemon Esrei, and it says, like Arizal says about like fire. The person should be careful like fire, not being mafsik after Shemon Esrei until not just left by chul, until after the last words of the person should remain by Mekadosh Tabel. You have to talk out. This is the importance of Bayachulu. Bracha Achas Be'en Shava, Ogin Ovis, which is one bracha, as we said, repeat again, that this bracha is one single bracha. There will be one omeid to be said for this bracha at the end of Mekadosh HaShabbos, not before Ogin Ovis, not by Kelim Kedesh Mayim, or no omeid is in there. As a showing us that it's something which doesn't belong there. And then the Kaddish Eskabel, and then of course we have fitting is that we say Israel David and Borcho on Friday nights. Also the Din says that milk in the bracha itself, the Kaddish HaShabbos, that it's the bracha of Shemon Esrei. We have Yeruchu or Chol Yisrael Kachish Melech. Friday, you know, we have Menachem Mendel Shabbos morning, Shachas and Musa, we say Menachem Mendel Shabbos Tanich, Menachem Mendel. This is very appropriate today. Today is the wedding, so it fits in very appropriately because this deals with the chassid and kala. Ladies first, so we have Menachem Mendel first. First comes the kala, and then in the morning, boy. We have boy, of course, the boy is not the chassid. Boy deals with the father of the chassid, Yaakov, or is hakalka pochim kadisha, which is the malchus, which is the malka. The morning boy is atika kadisha, that's the keser, actually it's even higher than Aharon. Atika kadisha, atika. And then mincha. We have mythos, the greatest movement, the holiest movement, turning us, there's nothing greater than bringing out chesed and nachman, and the merging of chesed and din. That brings out the first, which is nachman. Bo stands for the chasson and kala, which is the eidamkin and the malchus to the eidamkin. That's at mincha of Shabbos, Menachem Mendel, that's plural, and together. That stands for the chasson. The moment when a person can derive so much rachman, so much shef of rachman, it's called an ayvod and ayvod. The person should have Talmud then to function that for the rest of the week. These tefillas, of course, we have, you know, the tefillah on Shabbos morning, which is the tefillah of Nishmas, again, which refers to the Yerushalmi Seder. Very briefly, as a reminder, in case anyone has forgotten, it's important to get on record. But the Yerushalmi Seder consists of three parts: nefesh, ruach, and shama. And those three parts, too, are in two sections. As we said, bone is there, which means that there's the male section and the female section. This does not mean taken literally, no male and female. Please, the dukhla and dukhla, these are chesed and din, or Arizal says some more as the shnia and the kabel. These two get together, you know, the greatest yichud of all. Now, the nefesh, ruach, the shama of dukhla, the malchus, lower part, phase 3, person received on Friday night. Nefesh, ruach, and shama of the dukhla, nothing received on Shabbos morning. And the person must have kavanah at the time he's taking this in, receiving. Of course, the Aharon for it, explain that there's Aharon for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There's already made for it. Aharon, these are light, a ray of shine comes in on Wednesday, the nefesh, on Thursday, the ruach, on Friday, the shama. But Arizal says when a person goes to the mikveh on Friday, he should have mind, the tips, Hineni, Mechabe, the Hossi, Mishcha, the Chavya, the mind to remove the garment, the cloak, the skin, the hide of a snake, the special skin which we have today, is costless oil. Skin, which is of course tulah, not the same skin as Hadnisha before the Chay. Remove this covering of the snake and take upon ourselves the costless oil light of the Yerushalmi Seder. The order of the light of the Yerushalmi Seder instead of the oil with an ayin, oil with an aleph. The difference, of course, is with the chayim light. That's so at night, Friday night, this is again the preparation. We come on in the mikveh. But at night, when you say Loi Kala Shabbos Malkasa, that's the first step. You receive the nefesh nefesh. Loi Kala Shabbos Malkasa, the first step. Receive it, and of course, therefore, the name of the kasha about the Ashkenazim, those 4 words are omitted davening. See that they, well, anyhow, Hashem that we have, we say the right words for the Kabbalah, receiving the nefesh. You say that on Friday night. At the water hole, you have in mind that we are now Mekabel, the Ruach Seder. 3 days. Place Alinu, Sukas Yachim, Chaim, Shalom. Those words of Place Alinu, we have the Aharon, the actual receiving of the Yerushalmi Seder in the morning, where you receive all three of the higher levels, at the word Nishmas, which is the word, you have to to Kabel, the Nefesh, the Seder of the higher level of Nefesh. And then, of course, this is a little topic about this because there's a whole story that creates Chaim, the Seder Kabbalis, the Shadow Kabbalis. Chaim tells them about how he writes about how he received this information. It's interesting to note that they were received at two different times where there was a whole change, a whole switch change in this entire information as to places where the additional Dusha is received. It's too complicated to go into. I'm giving you the final, let's say the psak, final word, final decision. And he tells us the final word is that the Nefesh Yisera at Nishmas. The Ruach Yisera, very delicate point, to be mechaber because there's an example of a place where you're not allowed to have any kiruv for anything in existence. No Umay, no Baruch, nothing. No Yesh B'Yavad, that's between the words God and Yisrael, and Hashem Sosai Tiftach, a person cannot be mafsik for anything at all. So it is at that point, practically, that a person is mechaber the Ruach Yisera. And that's the question that's what the Rebbe tells us what about that item. The final word is that the Ruach Yisera is received at the word Tehilasecha. Hashem Sofasa Tehilasecha, then you get to the Ruach Yisera. It's got to be done very quickly because you cannot pause then. You must have to be Kasher, go on Yisrael, and Baruch Atah Hashem. Hashem Tiftach is Tchilah Nichta. It must be together with the beginning of the bracha. So you have to very fast go to the Kabel of the Ruach Yisera without stopping, pausing for a fraction of a second. He said it's a very delicate point that it requires kavanah. You don't fall asleep at that moment. Finally, the Yerushalmi Yisera, the highest part, you see that the words Aye Mekayim Kavaydai. Aye Mekayim Kavaydai, you know, of course, Aye is the combination of the Gibel again, the three top spheres. Aleph, Yud-Kei, Aleph is Keser, Yud-Kei is Chacham Labina, Gibel Hayel, already Aye, which is Mashpia, and the Yerushalmi Yisera, Av Duchta, with the highest additional Tesus, Kedusha of Shabbos. This is what a person should have to on and davening. You should be zecher as Zohar Kodesh says. Tikuney Zohar says that this is made, all this tremendous power is made for Amanatzim. Or why we should be Amanatzim, right? Or why? Because it's brought to a live person, we don't have the ability. The Tikuney Zohar says that tzadikim are so great that they are makshich upon themselves this Yerushalmi Yisera during the week. They have this during the week. Arizal says, in fact, that the candle, the person receives candles and doing mitzvahs. These candles he uses after he passes away. He goes to the heavenly treasures, storage room in heaven. The chapes begins in the mocha. He searches for these candles, despite the treasures of heaven. Whatever he finds, there is his. The candle lasts only as long as the kedusha of the mitzvah he performed. So there are tzadikim who are zecher do this during their lifetime. They can search for the treasures of heaven during their lifetime and receive this greatness. They can be so great that their candles are everlasting, they never go out. This is what Tuesday means too, that a person, the tzadik, who is so great, he receives the Aharon and Yerushalmi Yisera of Shabbos, which means Alam Haba, even during which means Alam Hazak, which means zecher to be mekusha to such tzadik. Tzadik because it's supposed to be tzadik you have to follow along with him to these treasures of heaven. That's what we should sing for his follow with that. Practice in the foliage, and we go with things we can. Look at Shabbos Kiddush on Friday night. starts, you notice, with the words Yom HaShishi. Actually, you're not supposed to break up a posek in the middle. So you're supposed to say silently, Yom HaShishi. Though that too is in the middle of the posek, we once explained why this is permissible. But we say out loud Yom HaShishi, Vayachulu HaShamayim, and you pause. But you have the Rosh Tevis, first letters are Hashem's name. And then the rest of Vayachulu. Vayachulu, of course, is the beginning of this chapter, which means that you have reached the Shabbos Kodesh, which is the Atzilus. Elam HaAtzilus, Hashem Ayin Beis, Vayachulu, Begematria Ayin Beis, Hashem Ayin Beis. Now, note that in Vayachulu you have exactly 35 words. Zaydik Kodesh says you have 35 words in this paragraph, and you have exactly 35 words in the Bracha Mekadesh HaShabbos, which means that, as the Arizal says, beware of joining the opposing forces. The Ashkenaz add words to it, kiruv yain, those 3 words, and kion arachat, which is supposed to be omitted. You add those words, you have more than 35 words, which is definitely breaks up the purpose of the Kiddush. In this sense, Kiddush shows 35 and 35, exactly 70 words. 70 words, the gematria ayin. Ayin is 70, which means the word I. Also, yayin, Kiddush al hayayin. Stands that both Kiddush is on, yayin on wine. And Kiddush also is a tikkun for the einayim, for the eyes. The ayin, which in itself, the eye, plus the fact that, since we are speaking now about the Kiddush, which is the Eirampin, shame more, the Chayayim is Kuf Lamed, cow. You have Vayachulu is of, the Kiddush is Ayin, which is cow, of cow, or boah. The Kedusha comes in on Friday, and it is of cow. Now, before even this, we said, of course, Kiddush is taken by Inayim, but and then says too, the Arizal says that there's a special tikkun for the eyes. On Friday night, the Kiddush, every person should learn to get the custom, the habit, the nature, that when the Vayachulu is said during that paragraph, the person should look or stare at the candles. Look at the candles, stare at them, because this way you draw a tikkun both for the gashmius, a cure for the eyes, also a nuchnius for a pegam of the eyes. The person is chas v'shalom plaguing constantly for looking at things that are wrong, looking at things that are tummy. And this is the case when you say, the person should go to follow the bad things that he sees with his eyes. Plus means things that are tummy. The Gemara says starts with the eyes. First part of a sin is the eye. The eye sees, the heart desires, and the rest of the army, the 48 organs, they carry out chas v'shalom the sin, which comes from above, from the mayach. The zerach Hashem comes from the mayach. So it's the eye that begins this. Therefore, the tikkun for the eye is to look at these candles, because the name of Kivnish Mas Adon, that's tikkun beruchni, is look at the candles during the time that the Vayachulu is said, during the time that the Baracha Pepe Agofan is said, and in Kadeh Shabbos, the person should be nisayin einav b'kais, looking to the kais yayin, and kais is the Matya Kim. Kais is the Kisei covered, like Kim is Bina, you go up to the Bina. That way, we carry the Kedusha, this of Kiddush, which is Kedusha, the Klal of Afrat, which we have to become with Shabbos V'yenes, Kedusha, take upon ourselves the Tesus Kedusha, and then by Mizrach, which is see the Gula Shleim and Meirachmi. Look at Shabbos. Tefillah of Shabbos, we have one additional Tefillah, it's called Tefillas Musaf. The Musaf Tefillah represents the Korban Musaf brought on Shabbos Kodesh in the Beis HaMikdash. The time for Tefillas Musaf is immediately after Shachas. Proper time to daven Musaf is immediately after Shachas. That's the time of the Korban. If a person is late, Some people are very, very great. Tremendously great Chassidut. They are above the concept of time. So they start Shacharis late. Of course, they are so high we cannot understand them of our understanding, comprehension. They start Shacharis later than what the Shulchan prescribes. So probably they're higher than that too. We don't know. But they start Shacharis that late. It means that Musaf is that much later. So what is the deadline for Musaf? Deadline for Shacharis was lost already. How about if they make a deadline for Musaf? Musaf deadline is 1 p.m. Person must finish Musaf by 1 p.m. properly. However, if he did not daven Musaf until 1 p.m., he is called a pesheya. It means he has done wrong. He has committed a crime, speaking about crimes, and his crime is that he davened Musaf past the Zman. Now, it is possible a person should daven Shachas on time, davens before the Zman. He didn't do anything wrong there, finish on time. And then, in many places in shuls where you have a simcha, they have one of those things they call an eifruf, a chosun, and they have a lot of guests, and they've got to divide the parsha. It's a long sedra, and then there are long drushes there. The Rav holds a very long sermon, and this drags out for a few hours until they find that though they started Shachas on time, now Musaf has been delayed to a point where it's past the prescribed time of 1 o'clock. That time of 1 o'clock is the deadline, meaning that if you daven Musaf afterwards, the person is called a pesheya, a criminal, a sinner, but at the same time, he can still be Yetzir. He has done a crime, but he's still Yetzir with the tefillah of Musaf entire day, till sundown. However, once this time is gone by, in other words, once he reaches the Zman of Mincha, then it's a question of which one comes first now. Generally, Musaf is first, afterwards comes Mincha in the afternoon. But once these two conflict, there's now time to daven Mincha and also time to daven Musaf, which one comes first? We have a rule always that Todi. You have something which is steady, something which is occasional. The one that is steady goes first always. Mincha you have every day. Musaf you have only occasionally, once a week or slightly more. You have a shchedesh in the table. Therefore, in that case, then Mincha should come first. The person must daven Mincha before he davens Musaf. This is only if a person is a yachid, alone. His house, or for some reason he can't get it, he's out in a small town, he's wandered off, then he must obey the rule of Todi and Shin and Tadish. Means that if he goes past the Zman at 1 o'clock, then he must daven first Mincha and then daven Musaf. But if it's a tzibur, a minyan, a shul, they should not deviate from the minhag. The minhag that always is that you daven Musaf after Shachris, this should be kept even if it went past the Zman of 1 o'clock. And Mincha is after Musaf. This does happen at times on the Rosh Hashanah. Sometimes the first they drag out the davening, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So this could happen. After all, there's a lot of things that transpire then. So therefore, we further that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, when it does come to pass that Musaf starts after 1 o'clock, there's no question about they daven Musaf first. Of course, it is B'tzibur with a minyan. There, the minhag should be followed always of having Musaf first and then Mincha. Should be zechet to be the Mali Tashlamenu, the Tefillah Lokum Korban. By davening Musaf, we fulfill the mitzvah of the Korban Musaf. Should be zechet to physically bring the Korban Musaf in the Beis Hamikdash and later Amen. Okay, Shabbos. The Tefillahs of Shabbos, we have added not only a different Shemon Esrei, different bracha, but also the Shachas. We have the additional Sukkot Zimra added between Haidu and Baal Shama. Person comes late to shul, Chas Shalom, then he may start from Baal Shama and make up these passages after Shemona Esrei. He's allowed to make up for it. But if he comes that late, that he cannot say Nishmas, that cannot be made up anymore. Nishmas is a tefillah that must be said only in its original place. It's a special tefillah that's added before Shabbos. There's no way that, even though anything before Baruch Hu can be made up usually. Anything but not Nishmas. This halacha, al-pi halacha, is very difficult to understand. Why should Nishmas be different than it's before Baruch Hu? Well, we know that the Arizal says that this is the moment where the person receives the beginning of the Oras Nefesh Yeseda of Shabbos, Tzad Aducha. We can understand that this is the spot that it's too late to make up for it afterwards. Therefore, a person should see to it, above all, to be on time in shul, not to have this problem ever arise. If it does arise, then it's confronted with a major dilemma. Whether to skip Nishmas or whether to lose out on the minyan. The question of, he says it'll be too late. It's a dilemma that person shouldn't be faced with. Now, there are other bigger problems. A person is davening Shemona Esrei on a Friday night or Shabbos Shachas or Shabbos Mincha. He says Akil HaKodesh, and then he's supposed to say Ato Kidashta. Yismach Moshe, Ata Echad. Instead he says Ata Chinein. He uses the words Ata Chinein, just those two words alone. It is that he must finish the bracha until Baruch Atah Hashem Chinein Hadas. The reason being that originally, really, you're supposed to say the entire Shemona Esrei like weekdays. That's the way it really should have been. The Chachamim said because it's Shabbos, therefore, for the sake of the Shabbos Menucha, rest, for the sake of Kedusha Shabbos, we give the people a break. They say only 7 brachas, 3 in the beginning and 3 at the end, only 1 in the middle of Kaddish Shabbos instead of the regular Shemona Esrei brachas. But that break is only the person who says it normally. If he started to say a bracha which there is really a chiyuv to say, he must finish it. That's only if he said the words Ata Chinein or more. Or in fact, in the other bracha, if he started to say middle bracha of the weekday Shemona Esrei, he must finish the bracha. But if he just started the word Ata alone, with the intentions of saying Ata Chinein, intended to say Ata Chinein, then there is a machlekes of poskim, very big machlekes, and it seems that Kitzur Paskins, in the case of Shabbos morning, you do not have an Ata. Let's say, for example, in the case of Friday night or Friday Mincha, it really is Ata Kidashta or Ata Echad. So the first word is Ata anyhow. So if he said the word Ata for Ata Chinein, but he said no more, he still is allowed to continue a Shabbos bracha, because it's the word for Shabbos bracha anyhow, so there wasn't really an error. The question is only if he said Ata on Shabbos morning. When the word is Yismach Moshe, begins with, there's no Ata there. The question is, does this Ata mean that he made a mistake between Shabbos morning and Friday night? A mistake in the Shabbos tefillah itself that requires no completion of a weekday bracha? Or, since in mind he had to say the words Ata Chinein, in his machshava there was the intention of saying the weekday bracha, does he have to finish it?